to part two of the implementation and proposal portion of the information session videos presented by a Stronger Foundation. I'm Dr. Small. This video will continue sharing my perceived contributions to the education problems that exist, as well as my proposal for incorporating an ethical learning experience for all children. In a moment, you will watch a previously recorded video that sufficiently describes the present elements limiting students' achievements. Please be advised of an error in this video. Due to an oversight where I meant to present 50% and autocorrect presented 51%, throwing off the data. However, the information is informative and rich. Therefore, please disregard that negligent error and enjoy the video. Let's begin. Welcome back to part two. Thank you so much for coming back to the video. Again, thank you for your interest in learning more about our plan to restore education to help our children live a meaningful life. Let's go on back to our notes. So we left off here entering into grade 3. So grade 3 is a pivotal academic year, as you know, and it tilts the academic compass towards excellence or mediocrity. And I'm hoping that we can own that the scale is tipped. Third grade, pivotal year, excellence versus mediocrity. Why do I speak that? I look at the data. All of what I'm saying is data-based. And now greatness, life greatness, not just talking about fourth grade greatness or sixth grade greatness. This is a point where it's either framed, where we know this child is on the right path with secondary success, or it's surrendered here. At this point, a child will think, again, I won't go back over it in detail, but they realize that things are falling apart. They don't understand. They're looking at the other kids that maybe are doing a little better, and they're seeing that, wow, academically, I'm not where I need to be, right? So at that point, greatness is surrendered or framed. And the culprit here is fear. Emotions are the culprit, and the greatest emotional culprit in education is fear. Fear of what? Fear of failure. Do you know what it's like to be in a classroom and you don't know the information the teacher is teaching you? It brings shame your way. You get embarrassed. And so what do the children do? They begin to blend into the cracks. Again, where can I fit? If I can't fit there, if I can't be the best academically, where can I be the best? They begin to fit in the academic cracks. So they start to fade down into that. And they reach a mental acknowledgement. This is what it is. It is what it is. Now, there's a solution for all of this that we will provide and introduce to you. We're just pointing out to you now what's happening with our children that's showing up in that data. The children then begin to embrace a coping posture. They embrace a coping posture. So they align their concept, their self-concept, and their perception. Because back in kindergarten and second grade, kindergarten through second grade, these children had a dream and they aspired to conquer the world. And it was all very, very, very possible in their mind. To see, It's not just about what we think about our children. It's about what our children believe about themselves. That's what really counts. And that's what matters in the end. So when they embrace this low concept and now they have this low perception about their abilities, they're officially off track with their one moment in time. And so, what is this one moment in time that I speak of? You see, I believe that all of us were born on purpose to fulfill a purpose in life. And when you see people who are off later on in life, and again, we're not talking about rich versus the poor, we're talking about fulfillment and meaning. And sometimes it has nothing to do, you could be poor and be fulfilled. Or, right? Because don't forget, poorness is based on an economic structure or guideline. If you make this much, you're considered poor versus that much, you're considered rich. So, meaning and fulfillment is more internal. I'll leave that there. So, one moment in time is that moment when you come face to face with that purpose for which you were created. Some examples are, I feel like when they win the Olympics and you're the fastest person in the world, you dreamt about this from you were very little. I read about a story about one of the fastest women back then and how when she was young, she was crippled. She had issues with her legs and the process her mom went through to get her from being crippled to being the fastest woman in the world. That's huge. But this little girl had a dream. And that's my point, is that they have dreams. They know from their young that they have a purpose, and that greatest connection is happening when they're very innocent, before they've given up, before they embraced a different self-concept based on now their defeating perception of who they can be. So, yeah, when you're standing in that place and you're getting that gold medal and you look back and you think, oh my God, there was a time that I had trouble walking. There's a time I had trouble with my legs, the pain, the surgeries. How is this even possible that I've aligned with this greatness? That is your one moment in time. And not a lot of people get there. So true. Not a lot of people get there. So that is the one moment in time. So when I refer and I say that this is the moment when they are off track with their one moment in time, that's what is meant. And that is the essence of human life. That one moment in time, that is our essence. And we spend our whole life trying to align with that person, that ideal person, whole life. So when you actually link up with that version of yourself that achieves such greatness, come on, what a victory, right? And so the education system implicitly releases the problem. I said the education system, we release the problem, because then we come face to face understanding how far are you going to push a child that doesn't want to go? How are you going to get a child to study and get an A on a test when they have no internal interest? So now we just have to start going through the motion of making sure we have the right plans in place, making sure we're implementing and including the law, the No Child Left Behind, make sure we are in alliance with those, just doing what we need to do. Because if this child don't want it, you can't give it to them. And I'll explain why in just a moment. So when I say that we have implicitly, not explicitly, we're not going to say, I gave up on this one, but implicitly, we have taken that step back, realizing now our hands are short. Cannot force a child to learn because that takes mental structures, right? And it's evidence that we have done this because we do not have a life plan. How else will a child succeed if they don't have a life plan? Learning plan is only good enough to get the child to learn the academics, the curriculum material that we want them to learn. A learning plan is only good enough to get them to someday have the academic elements to survive. Mm-hmm. But a life plan is a completely different thing. A life plan is going to align the children ethically. Okay? The general learning plan is so that they can go to a grocery store and when a cashier say you owe $12.39, they know how to count that out. And they have an idea how much change they should get back. They have sense enough to be able to go and work in a grocery store and do well. They have life skills. But it's not the same as the ethical life plan that we put in place just to honor the life source that is necessary, as we talked about before in part one. That life source education that is necessary to align them with their one moment in time. What I'm saying is anything less than aligning a child or preparing a child to align with their one moment in time, anything less is unethical. Because who else can help them but us? Now, I know that the way we're trying to help them is being resisted by, they're resisting it because we're trying to push in and their life approach right now is not as rational as we see it. Because now we're adults and we are reasoning from a different place, a different rational level than any child is able to rationalize from. They're not going to understand some of the concepts that I'm telling them. Oh, if you get a great education, you're going to have a great life. They don't get it because in their mind, their life is going to be great. It's not until they get to a certain level of development based on Erik Erikson's theories. It's not until they get there where they understand, wow, there are multiple versions of me, at least two. There's one that will achieve mediocrity, but there's another one that's going to align with greatness. And so they enter what I call the drop-off zone. And at this point, I'm hoping that you're looking at your notes as I'm facing you. So they enter what I call the drop-off zone. And that is that period, the border between fifth grade and secondary. And now this is more of a psychological phenomenon, what I call the drop-off zone, where a fixed mindset dominates. Because now you're in sixth grade. It's fight or flight mode. It's fight or flight mode in sixth grade. And so all of what I said that begins to happen from third to fifth, where they're realizing their shortcomings and they're starting to, they're growing. They're going through the stages of development in Piaget's theories that's explaining that they're becoming more conscious about real life. They're no longer now they're in a concrete development, okay? Not when they used to think that an object didn't exist because you put it behind your back. Now they're in the concrete stage of understanding. And so now they have a very fixed mindset because they enter that fight or flight. And they have to have a fixed mindset or they'll be devoured. And now they're plagued. So now they're here where they had the mindset here, and at this point, they're completely plagued with memory, past memories. And remember, everything I say is data-based. They're plagued with memory issues. And I'll talk about what memory I mean, but it's like memories that kind of bring them to a place that they don't like. They're plagued with retention issues. They don't know how to remember academic stuff, things that they're learning in school. When when you reteach fractions, they forget what a denominator is. You taught it already. They don't remember. So now they have this huge retention issue because we were relying on the digital resources that was just giving them rewards and gratifications, whether or not they mastered the skill. So they never really learned this skill. So retention is a big issue. And you know how important retention is as you go into secondary learning, right? Because now it becomes subject-based and they're expected to remember so many information. It's at this stage now, there's a lot of being able to go back and forth. We're dependent on those mental structures to be able to engage in the network. Like we talked about during the stage, the window of opportunity, when that was that period, when they would have developed the skills, not just the natural skills, but the mental skills that would have engaged in this, to consolidate the ability to network, to have the mental, the cells going back and forth, from recall, retention, just being able to drag it back. It's just networking, mental networking, like we do on a computer, but we do it with our brains too. And of course, we already said they have those self-concept issues now. I mean, and it even gets even worse because now they're in sixth and seventh grade. You pretty much have the person that's going to enter their real life at this stage. They're mature. We have emotional issues, and we know what those are. That our teenagers and adolescents are struggling with major emotional issues like never before. They're looking at the adults in their life and they're realizing we can't help them. And it's not that we cannot help them. We're afraid to help them. We're afraid to take a chance. We're afraid to try other things because we've already tried so many things that just didn't work. And now you're listening to me and you're thinking, is this a possibility? Is there still something that can be done to reverse what's happening with our children? And I dare you to believe. I dare you to have the faith that it is possible. So with all the emotional issues, that's where the higher priorities are going. So you have a child that's sitting in a seventh grade classroom and the teacher's talking and all they're seeing is they don't hear the teacher. Their mind is so far away. Teacher is speaking. The child can't even hear him anymore. And there's a huge focus imbalance struggle. It's like they even try to focus, but now it's almost impossible for them to even focus anymore. And this is because at this stage, education processing has a lower priority with the brain. All these stimulus that's coming in now. Remember, when they're young, they're always getting stimulus, of course. But the major interest is, what does my teacher have to say? They love the teacher. Everything that comes out of the teacher's mouth is gold. We're in sixth grade now. If the teacher stopped speaking, that would be ideal. Okay, so let's go on down to the next level here. where we talk about the Great Divide. But before we get there, I did want to talk about, when we talked about the emotional issues, and also let's go back to our paper. When we talked about the memory issues, I wanted to dig into that a little bit more. And I wanted to talk to you about a part of the brain we call the amygdala. And then the amygdala is the part of the brain that is involved in emotion. And we've always heard that emotion and learning are highly correlated, highly tied together. So emotions impact learning in a huge way. So the amygdala, this is a structure that it regulates interaction with the environment in a way that sustains our survival. Now, I need to look at you for this. So it regulates interaction with the environment in a way that sustains our survival. We're talking about fight or flight. We're talking about that different level that you get to when you hear a knock that you weren't expecting in the middle of the night, and your amygdala goes into action, like what's going on. You're ready to either fight or flight, but you run away. But also there's a third component, which means you do nothing. You fight, you run away, or you just freeze. And I have to tell you that a majority of our children, they're freezing. They don't know what to do. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about that process. Okay. So, and tell you how it works. So we have that it's regulating how the brain interacts, and it's choosing what to interact with, because as an individual, I will tell you that there's some painful memories that you have that you choose to not really engage with. You'd rather not have it come back. It's in long-term storage because the most painful ones, we remember them, unfortunately. And you don't like when they come back. Because when those painful memories come back to the forefront of your brain, it's not just a memory that comes back. You know what comes back with it? That associated pain. Whatever pain you felt back, whatever disgust you felt back then, it comes right back. And it's almost like you're reliving it all over again. So imagine our children in school now. And remember, I told you, at some point they start to realize their weaknesses. They realize that they're not strong at certain things, or they think they're not strong, because I believe with practice, anyone will become strong. But that's where they are. They have a new mindset, and it's fixed. I'm not good at this. I won't even try because I'm going to fail. And they have this persona on. They have this wall that they have put up that no teacher is going to penetrate it with just great teaching. The greatest strategy will not penetrate a wall that a child has put in place based on emotional experiences from the time when they tried in class and they failed. Maybe someone laughed, or maybe not. Again, when you're going through that entropy, it's a mental episode, and you start to write your own story and your own narrative about who you are when it comes to learning, and who you are when it comes to social situation. You're writing the narrative. They are writing their narrative. So great strategy is not going to get through it. That's why I said early in part one, it's not the teachers that is the problem. It's not the curriculum that is the problem. And a lot of what I can mention, that's not what the problem is. The problem is that you cannot teach what you cannot reach. And so The implication of the amygdala and the impact that it has on the child's learning due to the emotion that impacts the learning is that the structures, this is how it affects their learning. The structures that are responsible for long-term storage and remembering, those structures are located in that portion of the brain we call the amygdala. And so that's why when a great teacher stands up and she is doing her thing, I mean, teachers are phenomenal. They are so awesome, not just because I'm a teacher, but I am just speaking from the position of looking at some teachers that I have observed and just how incredible they are. It's just how eclectic they are. I mean, they could work a miracle, but they're still not going to get through to a child who has that wall up. You're not going to reach them until we fix their perception or their self-concept. And it matters because the education relies on these emotional implications. So we're going to move on now to the Great Divide. Okay, what I call the Great Divide. All right, so learners are separated into accelerated and remediation courses as they enter secondary, right? And that's another confirmation to that learner that has that low perception that I'm not that good. Because see, when they put you in sixth grade math, regular sixth grade math, a lot of children already understand that that is considered the low math. Yes, it is. Regular sixth grade math is really trying to think of the word, but it's a math to help the children to relearn the skills that they have not mastered back when they should have. So it's remediated. It's a remediated process, sixth grade math. And you better believe that when half of their friends are taking seventh grade advanced math, it's confirmed. They know. And that's the reason why you begin to see as students enter sixth grade and seventh grade, there's a division, even in social groups. You know, back in third to fifth grade, these were best friends. As they enter sixth grade, and all of a sudden, this young friend, this young boy, now he's having lunch with a different group, and the separation begins. The economic separation. I should not say begin, I should say it begins to be more evident. So I'm going to go back to your notes with you. And so now the accelerated group are higher, but they're still below the standard bar. Remember when I told you earlier when we were looking at the two schools and I said, yeah, we want to be happy that they're at 60% across the level 4 and level 5. We want to be happy, but what we're still saying is that only 60% of the children, the brightest, best and brightest, 60% is the best that they can do. Why are we not at 80% or higher for the best and brightest? Why are they at a 60% proficiency level? That's a concern. So even though we have our seventh grade advanced math, that's really the old fifth and sixth grade math. That's where we used to be. Just look back at the old textbooks and you will see what I mean. And it's not okay that the bar has been lowered so that our kids can look better. That's not okay. And while I'm here, let's talk about the IEPs where we have children that's meeting expectations based on a lower standard level. So they're getting a report card that says, yeah, you have an A, but it's not an A on the on level. So what a confusion for this child. And remember I said we kind of took that step back and implicitly releases the problem here? Remember I said it here? But that's what that looks like. We begin to tell this child, you have an A. But not an A on the on level. You have an A on 2 levels below based on your IEP goals. So now this child think that they're actually getting an A. They're getting straight A's. They're on a roll, but they really, when you're aligning this with life, they're far from being prepared for success. And we implicitly release that problem because it can be overwhelming. I understand. See, my approach is back at grades kindergarten to 2nd grade. Let's fix that. We've got a great solution for that stage. We have solutions for other stages as well. But the most productive and the best will be if we take advantage of their window of opportunity so that we can have the child avoid all of the emotional implications. So it's great. We can save a 5th and a 6th grade and a 7th grader, but wouldn't it have been better for them to have avoided those negative memories in the first place? Sure. So the great divide separate our children economically. Now let's look at grades 6 through 8. 6 through 8 is a critical phase where deep learning pauses as the child enters an academic coma. So it's critical. They're in 6th through 8th grade and they enter this academic coma, and the learning pauses severely. This is when there's a high risk of dropout because the child has fought their way through those feelings since 3rd grade of feeling less than, of feeling mediocre, of realizing that they are falling away from their life purpose. They feel it. And so they develop this false ambition. And this is when you hear the children begin to say, I'm going to be a YouTuber. I'm going to get rich. That's my plan. Oh, all along, I didn't realize. I guess I never was a strong reader, but I don't need to be a strong reader to be a YouTuber. I don't need to know numbers and math to be a YouTuber. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a YouTuber. Problem solved. But for us as the leaders, our concern now is to prevent, we want this child to graduate. So our biggest goal is to make sure this child graduates. Our biggest goal is to prevent dropout. Definitely want to prevent jail. And again, when you go into certain less affluent areas, less diverse areas, you begin to see the difference in the discipline. And that same site that I brought you to earlier in part 1, you will see that you're able to look into the discipline information from the school. A lot of it is public knowledge. And you will see that a lot of these children are going to juvie or just being arrested, depending on what they're doing and their age, the severity of it. So we're trying to prevent jail because we do want them to succeed. And ultimately, we are attempting to prevent this child from entering self-destruct. self-destruct. They've fallen apart. They've given up. They're just walking the street. They've, like major mental health where they're just losing themselves. We want to keep them from performing suicide. And that's our great effort now to save. This is when the community services kick in. Um, can't remember some of them, but when they kick in and they start to teach these life skills, they attempt to do college readiness skills. We want to give them skills, how to fix refrigerators or ACs, or how to lay foundations, just to work with their hands. We start pulling out all the stops at this point. So now we're ready to look at the future of these children. We're ready to look at the future of the children. And this data is not official data. This is just a scenario. So of the students that we're seeing, and based on the data of 100%, about 1% of people normally become famous, right? Like the popular Ariana Grande that lived in or grew up in Boca Raton in Florida. That's where we're located here. So I use her as an example. She developed fame. Also in Florida here, we had the famous tennis players, Serena and her sister, right? They were also regular students. They became famous. I don't know many more. So about 49% will be prepared for the middle class. But with AI technology threatening to replace these jobs, it's more like they're going to enter the lower poor class. The lower poor class is going to become the working class. But the kind of job they're going to get, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like those type of jobs, because the jobs that were sustainable or, doable, gave you a little bit of pride, were those middle class jobs. That's now being done by technology. So imagine a lower class than the middle class, lower positions than the middle class position. That's lower. And the children are not going to enjoy it. That's 49%. 51% there, and I'm just going to say it. They fail at school. They may have graduated, okay? Because graduating alone doesn't really correct it. I know, again, we go into the mode where we just want to sustain them, help them to graduate. We just want to prevent worst case scenarios. So 51% homeless, menace, prison. Look at the data now. Look at the school data of some schools in some areas and the percentage of children that are constantly suspended, the percent of children who are arrested, and the percent of children who are already homeless. Now, what's really sad is that failure years ago, it looked different. When you failed years ago, you were almost just in a low class or middle class. Now, failure in these decades, it's not equivalent to failure of the future. Yes, it's going to be harder times. Harder times. And so I come back to you. The times are going to be harder. They're going to fail. People who fail will fail harder. It'll hurt more. And that's when we enter the ethical principle of a life plan versus just a learning plan. Our children need a life plan. And I know that we're doing our part with the learning plans, IEP, the PMPs. We're doing our part as educators. But what I think about is that regardless of the scores that the children receive and how they graduate and whether or not they graduate or get a GED, they're going to be tomorrow's leaders, whether we like it or not. I mean, our generation, we're growing. I'm talking about when we're up there, 85, 90, and these children that we're claiming are not being properly educated, who's going to be our doctors? Who's going to be the lawyers? Who's going to be the community leaders? They are. And you might think, well, how can they become doctors if they don't know their material? Well, we're so good at lowering the bars. They will become doctors, right? And I'm speaking to you, and I know that most of you are aware what happens in college with the fraternities that share the data, share how to pass the test. So they don't necessarily understand the material. They just had the information to show proficiency. And so they were moved on and they became doctors. And now, every time you look around, there was an accidental cause of death due to cardiac arrest. More than ever, that's the case. Now, I'm not comfortable with a doctor who did not properly earn their degree working on or operating on me. And I believe you may feel the same. So let's enter now the proposal, what we are proposing. Please follow along. So we must orient our students with a life plan at a very, very early age. We have to start speaking to our kids, just letting them know, there are two versions. It's okay, they can handle it. One of us, we're lazy. The other one likes to go. The one that's going to help us to be the most successful is the one that likes to go. So we teach them those principles, and it's all right. And so the academic success plan for kids, okay, that's ASP for K, the academic success plan for kids, that is a component of a stronger foundation, just like the academic restoration plan. The academic restoration plan, if you remember in our previous initial letter, that is for our nonprofit organization, where we're able to reach more children. And so we have a Project Reach. It's like a mentorship program and education, very rigorous education program. And as I said before you can teach, you can have the best education structure, but before you can teach, you must reach. And so for our first approach, we introduce character circle. Character circle is just what it says. And you may say, well, the district already has SEL and they have a lot of character counts. They've done so much. Remember what we said the problem was. The program itself is excellent, but they're unregulated and there's an inconsistency. And so it lacks accountability. And so a program that had all the elements to succeed doesn't succeed. It doesn't achieve the purpose because teachers' hands are tied. They're very busy. They don't always have time to deal with the character portion, without which it's like you're teaching to a wall. Look at our data, look at our score. There's nothing wrong with our students. It's all about our approach. Step one is character circle, okay? Giving the children a mindset enrichment, right? So this will guide the kids to voluntarily remove their learning blocks. It will show them how to immobilize and to control the stimuli that's always coming in. Remember, our brain always receiving input. Every moment it's receiving input. When you begin with mindset enrichment, you're going to teach the children, you're going to expose them to understand the existence of these stimulus, for them to know that. You're going to teach them how to mobilize so that they can begin to control that, because they have to be able to pull that back so that they can be able now to release the blocks and the barriers they have up toward learning. So one moment in time, the only way to get to your one moment in time is one moment at a time. Hence, OMAT to omit. One moment at a time to one moment in time. Let's go. Let's take a look at our notes. Here's our approach. Now, looking at 0 to pre-K. 0 to pre-K students in this first column, right? That's an enhanced approach. Okay, you're looking at programs like Jumpstart program and Hooked on Phonics. Those are parents that start before the child even enters pre-K. And throughout pre-K, you will have an enhanced and advanced learner if you begin processes there. There are plenty of data out there that they do. So the research, and if you look at the research, they do it for you. They follow it all the way through to these children that usually end up in the top 5% at graduation day. Moving to our next column, we see grades kindergarten through 3. Now, starting there, that's the normal, a stronger foundation approach path. That's the normal path. All right. We implement what we call the academic success plan for kids, which you see ASP for K. And it's a conditioning. It's a conditioning. We teach our children how to learn. And what we do there carries through all the way through their secondary learning into their college career. Here we condition the children academically and physically and mindsets. So what you have is a rigorous learner that understands the concept of growth mindset and grind. We take advantage of the window of opportunity so that we can generate and teach that critical thinking skill ability. And then we teach skills conditioning. Skills conditioning. It's like you're learning to ride a bike. When you learn to ride a bike, you think of that motion and that posture when 10 years later, you get back on a bike after not riding it for 10 years, you get back and what happens? You begin to ride it as if you didn't miss a beat. Now we're going to go into that middle large column, grades 3 to 5. We consider that a delayed ASF path approach. Now in K through 3, we're able to follow a very nice path motion, no stress, no anxiety, not too rigor, just the perfect amount of rigor for the window of opportunity stage. All right, 3 to 5, we're looking at a delayed path. All right, so what we have to do there, we have to accelerate what we normally would have done in the normal pace. It's a little more rigorous. The problem that we face in this group is that you have a lack of stamina. They're unable to adjust and adapt to the rigor. And there's a greater resistance and a lack of interest. You see, it's even greater. They're less interested than our K through 3, and the resistance is greater. And so we become dependent on parental help at that stage. Or if it's a school that we're into, then we're relying more on the actual classroom educator. Whereas in the normal path, we are able to work without any assistance there, any additional resources. But it is all possible. So grades 3 to 5, the other part is it's only for tolerant learners, because again, grades K through 2, they're willing, they're ready to go. They love learning. And sometimes the more rigorous it is the more excited they become. It somehow just attracts them because they love to win, especially when they're younger. And so grades 3 through 5 and even into the 6 to 8, you see that there's an alternative ASF path, and we rely on partnerships to reach these children. Okay. One main reason is because of the the fluidity of their ability to learn now. Don't forget, when they were younger, okay, those brain cells were ready and all about learning new skills. They were excited. But as we get older, even at our age, to learn new skills, we can always learn, that is true. But I will tell you, data-based, we learn better. The learning is easier, most productive during those stages when it was intended to learn that certain skill that we're trying to learn now. That's why learning a language now, our brain rely on neuroplasticity. And that's the ability of our brain to be able to stretch to accommodate new learning. That's why you never stop learning. We can always learn something new. But I will tell you, it's like an old brain trying to stretch an old brain. Think of a thin rubber band, how easy it is to stretch a rubber band compared to a very, very, very thick rubber band. There's just more effort necessary. And so in 6 to 8, grade 6 to 8, by then the child is in rapid recovery. And so the rescue looks like college life skills, career readiness programs. Okay. Again, it's an alternative ASF path. We rely on partnerships and youth outreach programs. And so it's harder to learn with neuroplasticity process. And so it's best to reach our children when they're in their window of opportunity. Right. So closing out, when we follow the normal process, you see here that our children can become academic champions, right? So following our process and our programs that we have ready to share, we create academic champions. And by that, I mean the children that will have a life plan. We don't hear people talking about giving children life plan until they get to 8th and 9th grade. And I think that's an injustice. We need to introduce life plans to our children, because how else will our children succeed unless they have a life plan? We're not trying to get them only to succeed in school. We want these children, our future leaders, to succeed in life. So again, I say, how else will our children succeed in life unless they have a life success plan? So what I'm saying to you, when we follow our process, by the end of 3rd grade, if we start the normal process, kindergarten through 2nd grade, we like to begin that process. But when we start there, at the end of 3rd grade, and let me fix that, because this particular approach that we're referring to is our long-term tutoring program. enrichment programs. And if a child begins in kindergarten at the end of third grade, we expect and anticipate a fifth grade education. That is what that means. If the child begins in first grade, it just pushes it out that 1 year. If the child begins in second grade, it just pushes it out that to that other grade. And the same, a fifth grade child would have that education of our current seventh grade education. So as I close, I do clearly see that there's a part of this presentation that is not showing, and that's just fine. I am going to read the bold information to you. It says, to date, local schools and the education system at large continue to repeat the pattern of implementing rescue efforts in grades 3 through 5 when poor learning habits have already developed and hardened. Hence, the same outcomes are revealed in test scores showing the majority of students failing to demonstrate true proficiency above 80%. The ASP 4K approach will reverse this data. Now, we offer a supplemental education enrichment geared to closing and preventing learning gaps based on the district scope and sequence. And that's what I love about this program. It is intended to align with the school's scope and sequence, whether it's the regular school district, whether it's the homeschool curriculum, whether it's a private school or a charter school curriculum. We are a supplemental program that comes alongside the school. We embrace the school's vision and their mission because in the end, we want our children to thrive, not just survive. We need our children to win. We don't just want our children to do great in school and be on the honor roll and the dean's list. We need to set up our children to align with the most meaningful and fulfilling life, because that is the ethical approach. That is the only ethical way for our children. I want to thank you for your time, for viewing this video meeting. I know it was a little long, but I thank you so much for your interest. And the next step would be for you to arrange an official meeting in person so that I can explain and show you what it looks like to implement our program to help raise your students' achievement and give our children a life plan that will help them to live the most ethical life with meaning and fulfillment. Thank you so much again. And you can reach me by the email address. You can email, you can call. I would love to come in and show you how we can supplement the curriculum that you are already using with your students. And we'd love to come and do our next presentation live. And it could be the last presentation, I believe, not positive. But in doing so, you could also request a follow-up video message if it best accommodates your schedule. Then we can record that final presentation that explains to you how our approach would look supplemented into your current approach. Thank you so much again, and I look forward to hearing from you. Goodbye.